Peace and conflict, one of the topics in paper 2 on Islam. We're going to have a look at some 12-mark questions. These are the topics that you need to cover for peace and conflict, so make sure you're revising each of them. When you're thinking about 12-mark questions, consider each of the topics and think about what you might be asked to evaluate. Some of them are going to be quite straightforward. So if you think of things like pacifism or just war or holy war or weapons of mass destruction, you're likely to get a statement which will basically ask you to evaluate whether Muslims should be for or against these things. Should Muslims be a pacifist or not? Should Muslims accept a just war theory or not? Should Muslims think that a war could be a holy war today or not? Those sorts of things. The first couple of topics might be a bit more tricky to think about, but you could also get 12-mark questions. So consider that. We'll have a look at some example questions next. Okay, so the last three of these questions are fairly predictable, what we've already said. All people should be pacifists, and that's inviting you to use Muslim ideas and teachings for and against pacifism. You may also be required, of course, to bring in some relevant ethical theories, things like utilitarianism or situation ethics. But the first two come from some of the other topics where it might not be as obvious what you're going to argue for and against. So we've got issues to do with conflict, and we've got here as a statement, religion is the main cause of conflict. And again, the second one, Muslims should always avoid violence. So again, perhaps there's quite clear links there to pacifism, but you can see how the question might be phrased slightly differently. So try and think about each of the topics that we saw on the previous slide, and consider how you might evaluate ideas for and against different elements of those topics. There are two really crucial things that you need to do in a 12 marker. The first one is what you need to do in all of the questions, which is to demonstrate good, clear understanding of what you've studied. So you need to be talking about Muslim teachings. You need to be developing those, explaining what they mean, using relevant quotes, and so on. But the second part is a lot more tricky, a lot more demanding, and this is where you're going to get a lot of your marks, is in your evaluation. So you're presenting an argument. You need to choose whether you support the statement or whether you're against it, whether you agree or disagree. You have to present arguments for both sides. You have to evaluate, and you have to reach a conclusion. So that's why we've constructed this structure to help you to do all of those things. So the sentence starters on the right help you to develop some of the detail as well that you need. But the way it's set out is according to the structure that you can see on the left. So we need to have both sides of the argument. So I've put in the red boxes represent when you're going to be explaining the viewpoint that you disagree with, and then the bits in the green boxes, that indicates those sections of your answer where you're going to be focusing on your side of the argument. And we've set it out in a very deliberate structure so that you can include your evaluation. And you can see that by just the words used, a weak argument, a strong argument, and so on. So the idea is that you, first of all, you have to decide whether you agree or disagree with the statement. That's crucial. Once you've done that, the rest will start to follow according to that choice. So if you agree with the statement, then the first thing you should consider is why some people would disagree with the statement. And that this is something because you are going to argue against that, you're going to consider that a weak argument, and you're going to criticize that, which will be the next thing that you do. Alternatively, if you disagree with the statement, then the first view you're going to look at is obviously the opposite, is the agree, why someone would agree. But again, same principle. You're starting with the viewpoint that you disagree with. You're going to present that. You're going to develop that. And then you're going to criticize it. You're going to explain why it's a weak argument. Then you're going to move on to your viewpoint, which is obviously the stronger argument. But you mustn't just forget about the opposite point of view in order to get reasonable balance in your answer. And here, in terms of balance, we mean kind of giving as much detail and a space to your answer, or similar amount of space in your answer to the opposite viewpoint. So you give your view, consider how someone would disagree, what kind of criticism they might raise against that, and then you need to respond to the criticism so that by the end of the your sort of mini essay there, you've got some clear arguments for and against, but it's really clear which side you're arguing, why you think your view is stronger, and then you can kind of conclude why it is that you agree with the statement or why it is that you disagree with that. So make sure you understand what this structure is doing, and it may be helpful also to kind of remember some of the sentence starters. Of course, once you're used to the sentence starters, you can adapt them and change them and not just follow them and write them out mechanically, but try and work them into the particular answer that you're giving. We've got here 6 bullet points that you can read through and consider. Might be worth pausing the video here, having a read through yourself, thinking about whether you're for or against this statement. So pause the video and have a read through and think about them. And then once you've done that, once you've had a think, it's worth considering what each of them means and how we're going to structure this. So we've got 6 points. They are just a starting point. You will need to add some more ideas and some quotes and things to develop the ideas. The structure that we've suggested is really a 5-point structure. So you'd take maybe 5 out of the 6 and, as I say, develop them. And then you'll want to think about how you match them up. So let's just have a bit of a look at what we've got here and then think about how we might match them up. So first of all, religion is the main cause of conflict. You might automatically think that all Muslims would be against that. So we've got an interesting point in the 4 where Muslims might think that justice is really important. Where there's oppression, it's really important that Muslims stand up against oppression, that they overcome evil. There's the idea of jihad, which is important in Islam, which is both the internal struggle within oneself to obey Allah and to live a good life. But that also includes a struggle within society to make sure that society is peaceful and just. And that may require Muslims to fight in order to overcome evil. So you could kind of develop this in a way by saying, well, there is a lot of evil in the world where you've got, people like Hitler, and you may use more recent examples. These people and, the Nazis and so on had to be defeated. Therefore, conflict can often be right, and religion causes us perhaps to see what is right, what is evil, and to fight what is evil. So you can develop an argument that way. More likely is to think that maybe non-religious people, atheists, humanists, maybe you might consider more likely to agree with the statement. And clearly this is a 12 marker where, although you do need to refer to Muslim teachings, you can refer to non-religious teachings as well. So there's historical examples like the Crusades, like the conflict in Israel over the disputed territory. There's also the idea that perhaps belief or faith has been used or could be used to justify violence, perhaps to promote their religion. On the against, we've got all the teachings in Islam about peace and the importance of peace. Remember, in this unit, you will have looked at how Muslims try and support peacemaking efforts, as well as the centrality of ideas of justice and peace. So they're the things that you'd want to include in developing that first point. And then you've got some non-religious viewpoints against the statement, perhaps saying that religion is not as influential. That's certainly true in some societies, maybe not in all. And also perhaps that there's always been other reasons for war, but that religion as a kind of belief system has often been a way of either justifying war or maybe kind of encouraging negative attitudes towards other people who are outside of their religion. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what each of the bullet points are about. And then hopefully what you can see that there's maybe kind of a parallel between the arguments for and the arguments against. So this is perhaps not too difficult to match them up. So if you're going to argue in favor of the statement, then you might start with something like Islam is a religion of peace, and then you might respond to that using the first bullet point about but achieving peace requires overcoming oppression and injustice, and so may lead to conflict. Equally, obviously, you could do it the other way around. You could disagree with the statement and reverse that, and hopefully you can see something similar with each of the other bullet points. So worth pausing the video again and now starting to think about how you would match up the different arguments, thinking in terms of our structure of a weak, then a response, a criticism of that weak argument, then your view with a strong development, a criticism of that, and then how you would respond to that criticism. So hopefully you can see how these points could be kind of married up into that structure. So pause the video and give that a go. Let's have a look at another 12 marker. So this statement, Muslims should always avoid violence. I've put up a reminder of the structure that we've already been talking about. It may be worth now pausing the video and perhaps coming up with your own ideas before we look at some possible arguments for and against. So pause the video, maybe mind map what are the Muslim teachings about peace and violence, just war, pacifism, and so on. Maybe you can generate some good arguments and ideas before we look at the examples on the next slide. So pause the video and give that a go. Okay, so here are some points that you can use. Obviously, you should know lots of Muslim teachings about the importance of peace, how Allah commands Muslims to do good, to stand up firmly for justice, to promote peace, and to reconcile people when they are in conflict. So use all of those kind of quotes and all of those teachings to develop the kind of bullet points that we've got there in favor of the statement. But just notice, though, that in the statement that we've got, it says always. So Muslims should always avoid violence. So if we take that statement quite literally, then what's being expressed is a form of pacifism, the view that violence is always wrong. Now, while there are many teachings in Islam that support peace, as we've just said, most Muslims think that there are occasions when conflict and therefore violence may be justified. So we've got ideas of just war and holy war, that where Muslims are being attacked, where the religion is at risk, where religious freedom is not allowed, where there is oppression and persecution, then it may be right to kind of fight back and to re-establish justice and thereby re-establish peace. Malik Muwatta's hadith on what the Prophet taught is really important, with the 10 forbidden things in the conduct of war. So there's lots of points there as to why it might be right within limits, and that is important. Again, the quotes often emphasize that Allah hates those who transgress limits, that is, go beyond what is right. So within limits, that may be justified to fight and thereby overcome evil with violence. So again, you might want to pause the video here and use the ideas and have a go at writing up one of those two questions. Hope that's been helpful. See you again soon.